to the Tiber River Cafe. My name is Dean Humphreys, and today's topic is my faith journey. Over the years, I have heard or read multiple faith stories of how people have come to their faith in Jesus of Nazareth. I love reading and listening about how people are awakened to the Christian faith, and especially how non-Catholics are drawn to the Catholic Church. I like to think of my faith journey as a winding path made of cobblestones, and that each day I add another cobble to my path. As I look back from where I came from, I can see all the individual cobbles and how they have formed my spiritual path. The array of cobbles make the path sometimes straight and sometimes a little crooked. Sometimes all are lined up uniformly, sometimes a little messy, at times a little bumpy, and at other times smooth as glass. But most times my spiritual path is simply a beautiful mosaic as unique as my DNA. As I look forward, I have a pretty good idea where the path is leading me, but there will always be bends and curves in the path. So I try to place my cobblestones so as to be strong and firm with a good foundation. It has been a wonderful journey so far, and I look forward to adding more cobbles as my journey continues. And as part of the Tiber River Cafe evangelization project, I thought it would be interesting to put my faith journey into words and to add my short story to the bigger picture. So I guess today's topic is just another cobble in my spiritual journey. So here it goes. I was baptized as an infant and grew up a Protestant, St. John's Evangelical and Reformed United Church of Christ, in a small town in eastern Pennsylvania. There hasn't been a Catholic in the Humphreys family since the Reformation, until now. At that time, I wasn't too interested in religion or going to church. There were very few kids in my family's church. I had to dress up and I had to wear shoes, my Sunday best, and there were mostly older people who didn't seem too interested in me. The Sunday morning services seemed far too long, kind of boring, and it was right before lunch, so I remember eating small boxes of raisins my mom brought with her to help quench my appetite. As a little boy, I was more interested in riding my bike and playing baseball with my friends than sitting in church listening to a long sermon. I went to church with my parents because they forced me. I would sometimes pretend to be sick on Sunday mornings to avoid going to church, but that ploy can only work so many times. Some of my fondest church memories were playing in the church's basement dining hall, as well as climbing into the massive antique pipe organ where I could actually walk around inside it as it was so large. At least to a little boy, it seemed overwhelming. There was a youth group at our church for about a year or so, perhaps 7 or so kids, and we went to the local production of the musical Godspell, which was fun. In middle school, I attended confirmation classes, but I can only remember a handful of classes. I think the pastor got the flu and we never resumed after that. I'm not even sure if I was ever confirmed. It was an older congregation, and there didn't seem to be too much interest in the younger crowd. And unfortunately, the church continued to lose membership, and several years ago, they closed their doors. My senior year in high school, we took an aptitude test to see what kind of occupations might be right for us. At the time, I wanted desperately to be a military pilot. It's all I dreamed about. You can imagine my disappointment when I looked at the aptitude test results, and not only was pilot not on the list, but the #1 job for me was Catholic priest, and #2 was social worker. I was devastated. So I was convinced my test results were mixed up with someone else's. As expected, once I went off to college, my church attendance dropped to almost 0, but I did have a few snippets of formation. I did go to an Easter morning service my junior year with a group of friends at the Methodist church near campus, but I don't remember too much about the service or the experience. The college I attended was in the Midwest, right in the Bible Belt, and one day I was walking through my dorm laundry area and came across a gathering of students in the basement, perhaps several hundred, at a Bible study of some sort. I paused for a while, thought it was kind of strange, and then kept on my way. There was also a gathering a few weeks later, and I was invited by one of the guys who lived on my dorm floor to go, so I briefly attended that gathering. It was a discussion about abortion. I have to admit that I was a little uninformed in my youth. I did not know what abortion meant. I was surprised and horrified when I learned the truth. It didn't make sense that it was legal in our great country that a mother could kill her unborn child. It simply did not make sense. I went back to my dorm floor and asked some of the other guys if they had ever heard of abortion. Apparently, everyone in the world had heard about abortion, and no one seemed to care. No one raised an eyebrow. I began to make a concerted effort from that moment to be better informed about a multitude of social and political topics. The summer before my senior year in college, I spent the weekend at my friend's house in Cincinnati. We had a really good time, going to watch a Reds baseball game, excellent home-cooked food, and Sunday church with his family. I wasn't planning on attending a church service, so I didn't bring nice clothes, but no one seemed to care as everyone was wearing their casual clothes. We were going to their Catholic church, and a little panic started to set in. I had never been inside a Catholic church. We had one in my hometown, but it was more like a little chapel, and I didn't really know too many Catholics. I had two best friends in high school, Craig, who was Jewish, and his family was perhaps the only Jewish family in my hometown, and John, who is Catholic, but perhaps not practicing, and me, the Protestant. It's almost a setup for a good joke. But now I was going inside a Catholic church for the first time. Was it okay? Would I get in trouble from my parents if they find out? Would I go to hell? I really don't remember too much about my first experience of the Catholic Mass. I wish I could say that I was in awe of the experience, how the Bible came alive in the liturgy, how I was moved by the architecture and stained glass. But I was likely more interested in looking at my watch and wondering what would be for lunch. It would be a few more years until I stepped foot in another church, and again, it was a Catholic church. After college graduation, I was living and working in St. Louis, Missouri, wearing a suit and tie, living the life of a young corporate executive, and honestly not liking one moment of the business world. I spent the weekend with a friend and her family in Illinois, just friends though, to watch a football game on Saturday afternoon. My college was playing her college. Her college won. But the next morning we went to their Catholic church. Again, I wish I could say how inspired I was, but I really don't remember too much, except it was a very large Gothic-style church with a lot of stained glass, which I do remember in fact, which was very inspirational, especially for a small-town Protestant boy. Also, while I was living in St. Louis, I dated a girl for a short while who was born and raised Protestant, but then converted to the Catholic Church after she graduated from college, a concept I had never heard of before. She seemed very happy with her faith decision, although I was perplexed why anyone would convert to the Catholic faith. And one other thing I remember about St. Louis was a Catholic monastery that was located several blocks from my apartment. I was curious what it would be like to live in a monastery, but the curiosity didn't last long after I reminded myself that I would first need to convert to Catholicism. And then again, it would be several years until my next church experience. My job as a young business executive moved me from St. Louis, Missouri to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I didn't have cable television in my little apartment, only a handful of local free stations when the antenna was positioned just right. And one of those stations was a Protestant station showing all kinds of shows from a variety of denominations. Some were very bizarre, and some were pretty good, so I would watch simply because I was alone and it was something to do. I could feel the rumblings of my Christian faith while living in Pittsburgh. I volunteered at Children's Hospital for a few hours every week, making coffee in the ICU waiting room. I started to investigate the various Protestant denominations and what their basic beliefs were. But my shallow interest did not go any further than a little research. But I could feel while living briefly in Pittsburgh that what was once only a very small ember of Christian faith was now starting to grow in intensity. My company then transferred me to Syracuse in upstate New York. I knew I wanted to get married one day, but first I needed to meet a girl. I wasn't into the club scene, and I was pretty sure I didn't want to meet my future bride at a bar. I figured the best place to meet a nice girl would be in a church. So there you have it, the first part of my faith story. Thanks again for stopping by the Tiber River Cafe, where there's always plenty of room at the banquet table. I hope to see you next time. Peace be with you.